Today we're talking KTM Duke 390, much more of the bike than you might think.
Mate, I'm already impressed with this. It wants to pop a wheelie. So this is what 390s are all about, yeah? Oh, completely took me by surprise.
1 year, 8,000 miles, those are the numbers describing my relationship with this bike. I own the full license, although I decided to go for this particular Duke because first, it was very cheap and affordable. At the time, I pay only £2,700 for this bike. Second reason for going such a low engine CC was to simply limit myself. I really wanted to grow up for this particular bike. The reason why I picked up the Duke was quite simple. At the time, I had absolutely no idea about bikes and biking. So the reason for the Duke is simply the look. I think it's quite standing out bike because of the bright colors, vibrant colors, and it's beautifully matching with that white shock absorber. In terms of mod, quite obvious what you can see here, right, is this huge top box. At the moment, this is my only machine I'm using for moving around, so the box is must have, especially if you consider this what we actually do here. We carry quite a lot of equipment with us, that's where it all sits. Some might say it ruins the look of the bike. I would probably even agree, but in terms of convenience and stuff like this kind of thing is must for me. In the future, I'll probably look to get another bike just for riding around. The only thing I did other than this top box are heated grips, because I'm using this bike whole season. The heated grips are must. If you don't have them, I would highly recommend to grab one. The mirrors were already there. Of course, they are not stock mirrors. Those are aftermarket ones. I prefer them way more than the original ones, simply because the original ones are so huge and bulky. Of course, as you can see, I've replaced the windscreen because I've tried to make this all-purpose bike. The windscreen is quite important for me because I've spent quite a bit of time on the highway. The windscreen is something in between utility, I would say, and the look, because I've picked the clear and I've picked like a medium size to do not ruin the look of the bike completely. This review is quite long-term review. That's also shown by the state of this bike. It's quite dusty and dirty, but I guess the reason why you're here is to find out honest opinion about this Duke. This is the first generation of the Duke. So far didn't have any problems with this machine other than battery, chain and sprocket, which I've killed myself simply because I've dropped the chain, I've let it be too loose. The top speed of this Duke, so this is the moment when I'm actually talking about why this bike is much more of the bike. So the top speed of this, I've heard, is 111, and then the engine just cuts off. So despite such a small CC, the reason for such a high top speed is the weight to power ratio. I don't know exact numbers. For those people interested in exact specs, those are the numbers for you here. And doing 111 miles an hour, what else do you need? Actually, I think you can already lose the license. I guess asking for more, for me personally, would require a little bit of experience, and I just simply need to grow up for this, because having all that power is tempting all the time. I think this bike is made for absolute beginners. Maybe not absolute, because that has already big bike. Despite the size, despite the engine, don't get me wrong, this is torquey machine. It's fun, it's simply a fun bike. This bike is around the performance of Tesla Model 3, so that might tell you quite a bit. The only time when you will be missing bigger engine will be obviously when you're gonna be riding with the pillion. I did that a couple of times, even longer journeys. I'm talking about 60 miles with the pillion. First, it's not comfortable at all because it's small bike. Second, the power, well, it takes a bit to get on that RPMs, and then it's just not made for this. So I would describe it as a perfect bike for the solo rider, for the beginner. It's quite small bike, it's quite light bike, which I didn't like on the beginning. It felt like almost a bicycle, but now I quite enjoy it because lightweight, you get that torquiness, and that weight to power ratio is really there. Obviously quite low. I'm like 177 centimeters high. I can flat it fully. First gear. Obviously I carry this huge box behind me, and now I'm so used to riding with this box that I actually prefer it. Cable operated throttle is quite rough. You need to really work with that clutch, but in terms of acceleration, like, not too bad with this Duke. Really enjoyable. The suspension, to be honest with you, I don't have much comparison of the suspension of the bike. I ride few more bigger bikes, obviously with way better suspension than this. I don't think there is much to talk about regards the suspension, because the bike is like so cheap, so good as for what it is. Yeah, as I said, you really need to work with that clutch when you, especially when you let the throttle down on this model of the Duke. There is not that much electronics controlling you and talking to you and taking care of, like, yeah, you see that it's like it's a bit jittery sometimes, but that's why you need to get used to with like controlling that clutch. Therefore, I believe, and I've heard from way more experienced riders, if you will master riding this bike, you might become a very good rider. I'm not a big fan of this digital dash, however, never had any problem with it. It's a bit tedious sometimes to like those buttons, like it's quite difficult to press, but again, that's a small thing for me at least. Some people had some problems with this dash. So far we have on the bike 11,500 miles, and yeah, it's running fine. I tweak exhaust a little bit. It's just a little bit louder, but still corky sound, so you can't expect crazy sound out of like single cylinder engine. It's gonna be always a single cylinder engine. In terms of like acceleration, as I mentioned earlier, you really need to be aware of the limit of this bike, because this bike needs to get its RPM. Alright, let's try to take off this bike now, and I will try to do it 0-60 as fast as I possibly can. Let's go. Yeah, like, speaking of which, this brake, front brakes suck. Really, like if there is like big complaint about this bike, I don't know if there is a way of upgrading it, but this front brakes suck. I found myself using the rear brake simultaneously along with the front brake all the time, because like I just don't trust it. I can't rely. It's spongy, it's weird. Nevertheless, the parts probably might need to be replaced soon. Yeah, man, it's really great bike. It's so small and you get so much for so little. Riding this bike is an absolute joy. We'll pull over because someone's behind us and I'm riding quite slow. So if you compare this bike to like a car, this is good sport car, man. This bike is matching. If it's not matching, it's quite close to the base Tesla Model 3 when it comes to performance. If you would straight pipe this bike, it will obviously become ridiculously loud, which I didn't want it to do, because I use that bike for everything. I really want it to be like an all-in-one bike. Ideally, you would like to have a few, and each one for the different task. Unfortunately, I can't afford that, so I try to make this bike all-in-one. That's why I put this huge box and I've added those bits and pieces, so to make it as reliable as I possibly can. In terms of modes, there are no modes at all. What you can do, I think, by holding, there is a hidden button here on the dash. There's no button, but if you press it, you'll feel it that there is like a button. If you press it for like 10 seconds, I think you can disable the ABS, and that's for the track, if you want to do track days with it, because you still can, don't get me wrong. Yeah, there are no other ride modes. The dash is like it is. I barely ever change. You can change obviously in between, like miles per gallon or liters per 100 kilometers. Etc, but yeah, you can't really play too much with it. There are no buttons on this version of the Duke. This is the first version of the Duke, and yeah, it's a bit old school bike. It's 2016 when I got it. I had 2,000 miles on this bike, but yeah, I absolutely enjoy it. I mean, I had some downtime with this bike when I start seeking a power, but then I realized like I don't really need that much power, at least just yet, because don't get me wrong, I never did that myself obviously, but I've had this bike is doing comfortably 100 miles an hour comfortably. So in a country when 70 is the limit, like what else you can expect? Like what else do you want from the bike? You're ripping on the highways, like most of the cars you're gonna be taking over like crazy. And I ride with big bikes like R7, like Ducati, Hypermotor 995, and I could keep up no problem. Here and there sometimes they will take you over, but it's just a matter of few seconds and you joining the group. And yeah, you would really have to ride with like crazy tough riders to not be able to like enjoy the ride with them. this is not 125, this is like more than twice as big engine as 125. So this is already the entry-level bike in terms of like real bike, I would say. So if you're considering this and if you're worried about lacking of power, lacking of acceleration, I think there is nothing to worry about. Obviously, this is my opinion and depends where you're coming from. If you tried already some big bikes, like this might be just a little toy for you, but if you're thinking about first bigger bike, something maybe to move from 125, oh boy, this is just fun to ride, man. Yeah, man, joy, fun, brake sucks, put some upgrades on it, more comfortable seats, pair of sticky tires, and enjoy it. If you will take care of it properly, you'll get yourself a nice little bike. Oh, you can probably hear that fan spinning. That's one of the cons I was supposed to say. This fan is loud, it's really hot running bike, something to consider, but again, not a game changer for me personally, but just putting this out there so you know. Because this is the first generation of the Juke, this bike is very rough. I feel like it's not as refined as modern bikes. Cable operated throttle requires lots of precision because it feels like there is zero, and then if you twist it just a little bit, it's like 40% from nowhere. So the throttle is not the best. Second thing I don't like about this bike is that plane flying above. The second thing that I don't like about this bike, and KTM already thought about it, is the seat, because they manufacture something what's called power parts. This bike, it comes with super uncomfortable seat. The only reason why I didn't upgrade it yet is because it costs 160 quid, and second, I used to with this one. So you might consider upgrading this KTM with the power parts like the seat. You can even get the upgraded seat for the pillion. This is so basic and so rough that you might have a hard time riding this machine. The second thing, in terms of mods, I forgot about that. I replaced the bulb because the front of this bike, well, in my opinion, looks a little bit outdated, especially in comparison to the modern KTMs. I've replaced the bulb from this old school bulb, yellow looking, to modern HID, I would say. Looking bulb. For some time my excuse not to wheelie was because I ride 390, and then I saw my friend doing wheelie comfortably on it, so yeah, it can wheelie. Although I feel like the wheelie on this bike is much more challenging because simply the distribution of the power is not equal. So on the bottom end there is nothing, and it feels like turbo hole. Is that how you describe it in the cars? So on the bottom end there is nothing, and you need to wait for the bike to jump on that RPMs, and then it pulls, but that makes it a bit more advanced wheelie machine. But yeah, definitely you can wheelie. Like, you can wheelie 125 if you know how to do it. I just don't know how to do it. Maintenance wise, I do everything on this bike myself, only because it's time efficient, cost efficient, and it's so easy to do. This bike have like a 3 filters, which is quite unusual. Only 2 liters of oil, cheap to maintain, and it's cheap to run because of the smaller engine. It takes less petrol, so that's a big pro for someone who's considering this bike for the city. Another thing I don't like about this bike is the front brakes. In compared to the other bike I rode, those brakes, like literally they don't exist, because this is single disc, and I don't know why exactly, but the front brake feels spongy. You need to squeeze that with, like, I would say 2, sometimes 3 fingers. I like to add that rear brake often. When I've tried other bikes with like a twin or double front discs, you literally touch and you stop. So if that's something that bothers you, that might be worth knowing. The last upgrade I want to talk about is the protection, the grille for the radiator. Cheap upgrades. 1 stone can ruin your entire trip. If it's so simple to prevent, why not to do so? In terms of the money and what you get for that money ratio, that's like, there's not much to talk about. This bike was so cheap, does everything I need. I went on this bike to Welsh with bigger bikes. I didn't stay that far behind because Welsh, lots of difficult twisty roads. The only time when I was staying a little bit behind was highways, bit wider roads, when there was really the space for the bigger bikes to open that throttle. Obviously, you can always try this bike or not. I mean, I don't know how difficult it's gonna be to get this edition of the Juke, because I didn't really see many of them. I can't even think of any situation when I saw that Juke somewhere in the city. You can get something like newer with the digital dash. I mean, this is digital, but You get that tablet feeling dash. I tried the modern Duke. It's be a little bit more refined, little bit less nasty and mean, but I bet you will have a good fun with this bike. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you like this type of content, hit that subscribe button. I will see you in the next one, man. Appreciate your time. See you later. Come on, what are you doing here? What else are you doing here, man? Just get out there and start riding, man, instead of watching me here. I appreciate you. Later. Bye.